I remember the line actually was Andrew Tate stuff. That Andrew Tate stuff, and in rehearsal we did like a read through, and it just came out my mouth. I just went, and that Andrew Tate shite. And I remember Phil laughing and looking at me and being like, keep that in, because I feel very passionate about, obviously as a woman, how we are treating women and how we're teaching young men a version of masculinity that is completely disgusting and damaging.
Let's take it back to the beginning of your journey with adolescence. Where were you at when this role first came along in life?
Okay, I'd just been shooting in Australia. I was on a break in the UK and I was going back to Australia, and I got this phone call and it was a number I didn't recognise. So like I answered it like it was like a frauder, like a pretend bank. And I was like, yeah. And it was Phil Barantini, the director.
Right,
and for some reason, I didn't have his number saved, even though I've known Phil for a long time. And he was like, "Hey, mate, it's Phil." And I was like, "Phil who?" It's like Phil Barantini. I was like, "Oh, sorry, mate."
Yeah, I just changed my tone.
Yeah, I did definitely change my tone. I was like, "God, you're doing well, aren't you, mate?" And he rang me up and asked me, "Do you want to be in this?" Which is, unusual for me. I'm an auditioner. I sit there and do self-tapes and get very nervous and then wait, a week to be told no or yes. That's kind of my experience. So Phil rang me and said, yeah, we're doing this one shot and it's about this and it's with these people. And I was like, I would do this for free. So yes, please.
Because how long were the rehearsals for each of your episodes?
Yeah, so we did 2 weeks rehearsal. The first week was kind of just the actors with an iPad. They were filming with an iPad just to get an idea. And then the second week, all the camera crew came in and the sound crew and the technical crew. So, you have people with booms dancing under your legs while all this is going on. And the dance that everybody got put together to do, it's quite an amazing, it's an amazing feat. And you don't realise how many elements and how many people have to know the exact same dance for it to work. And for not one thing to go wrong, or if it does go wrong, how you get out of that without you lot knowing that we've gone wrong.
Yeah.
It's an amazing process. Yeah.
Because it was kind of like a bubble when you shot it, right, over last summer. How special was this filming experience for you?
Yeah, we were in a car park in Pontefract.
Stunning.
Absolutely beautiful. It actually was beautiful.
Yeah.
It was really warm, and we had a whole unit base there, and we had like little trailers, streets. So like I live on this street next to Faye Marsay and Christine Tremarco, and then the street behind is
who is amazing in
I
this.
know.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we should get to that as well.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Oh my Lord. But yeah, so we had like sort of streets, and then you had Stephen and Hannah and Phil at the front and our makeup. And it felt like a town in itself. It felt, we're all from quite similar worlds, quite similar backgrounds, working class, northern backgrounds. So there was a kind of language that we speak with each other that kind of made it feel like like a home. Amazing set to be on, amazing unit base. We'd sit and have dinner together and chat and sit on our trailer steps. It was an amazing experience. Yeah.
What was one of the most special moments you'll never forget from filming it?
There are so many special moments. I think one in particular is we were about to shoot episode 1 and we'd done our 2 weeks rehearsal, and Stephen got everybody together there was sort of like a square, like a village square, if you like, where all the trailers were set up. We had this sort of square in the middle. And he gave this, it was this most empowering speech about, how special it is that we're all here doing this, that jobs like this don't come along very often, that scripts like this don't come along very often, and that we could make a real difference being in this show. And then he sort of likened it to being in a football team, and that we're all on the same team. This is our Champions League final. And then he I can't remember what the song was, but he put a song on. And everybody, it was like a spiritual moment. I know that sounds a bit wanky, but it was a spiritual moment, and people were sort of like hugging each other and having a little cry and really ramped up to go and do that first take. And I think with episode 1, we got it on the first day, so I think they used take 2. So we shot 10 takes.
Babe, you're good.
Yeah, we did. We did all right. I remember Stephen came to my trailer and was like, "I think we've got it, but obviously we've got to, Netflix are paying for us. So
We've got to make it worth their money.
We've got to do the whole thing." But he was like, "As far as I'm concerned, we've got it," and that was the one that we used. So the second take on day one of shoot week, and he'd given this speech, and he's extremely sincere, Stephen Graham, and he cares so much about the people he works with. But there was definitely something about being on that unit base with those people in that time, that summer, that, I will never, ever, ever forget.
I don't think anyone else is going to forget it who's seen it, because, over 66 million people, and while we're speaking, more millions are watching it. Let's get real.
It's wild.
And it started so many important overdue conversations about misogyny, incel culture, and raising children in a social media era.
Yeah.
For you, when you first got given this script, what did it say and stand for you? And has that changed at all once you've gone through the process of A, filming it, and then B, it coming out into the world?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think in the beginning, it was for me, it was, okay, what we're dealing with here is the impact that social media in the last 10, 15 years has had on our young people, and how the rate of how quickly that's taken over their lives, and how, corporations, these companies, these tech companies and the government have done very little to kind of calm that down and address the issues. That's kind of what I looked at it as. And obviously knife crime in the UK is rife. But as it went on, the conversations about, the female perspective in this story, and how, this is something that women deal with every day. That was kind of brought up more. And, my character has the line about Andrew Tate, and has the line about how it's always about the perpetrator and never about the victim. So for me, that was like, it's not stuff that I didn't know, but it's stuff that, for the first time, I felt like was being pointed out in a script on television. And then as we've gone on, and as I've spoken to my niece, for example, is 14, so she's in the thick of this. And what I've realised is actually it's a story told by adults, from an adult perspective. But what we need to be doing is listening to the kids, listening to Fatima, who plays Jade, Amelie, who plays Jamie's sister, Lisa, Owen. I've had conversations with the people that actually this is centered around. And I think if we try and control kids and not listen to them, they pull away and they retreat more into these things, where they find places where they can be heard, and they find places where they feel important. And what's happening, I think, in parenting, and I'm not a parent, so it's very difficult for me to have such a strong opinion, but I do think that social media is now parenting kids more than parents, and it's very easy for children to retreat into that. And if you don't ask, connection, basically it's about connection.
Yeah.
And, I always say we've never been more connected, right? But we're so disconnected as looking at each other in the eyes. So in answer to your question, that was kind of a long-winded version of saying, I thought it was about one thing, but of course it's about so much more, and we're all learning as we go along. And I think that was the point. We never said that we had the answer when we were doing this. Stephen and Jack never said, this is the problem and here's the answer. We just went, this is a problem, and can we have a fucking conversation about how we can tackle this? Because it's not just about children being dragged into dark spaces. It's about reconnecting with kids. How much time is screen time? When the connection's suffering between you and your child, surely then that's enough screen time for them, But you can't take the phone away. It's never going away. You're not going to take social media away. These things are not innately dangerous. It's how they're being used. We all have to adapt with how the world's going. I've never posted so much in my life. And I'm lucky I have a publicity team that I trust, who know me well enough to know what I can handle and what I can't. But I've never been someone massive on social media because it frightens me. And when I did Game of Thrones, the abuse I got from that was insane. So I just kind of went, yeah, this is probably not for me. Now imagine being a child and being able to take that into your bedroom on a night. Bullying happened when I was a kid on the playground, and then I went home and I thought about it, But now I can take it to my bedroom with me. That is terrifying.
What kind of messages were you getting during that time on Game of
God.
Thrones that were affecting you like that?
Yeah, they're pretty bleak. I mean, some just, we hate you, like, because Maisie's character was obviously and rightly like one of the favourite characters. She's a brilliant actress, and so if you're playing the character that tries to bash her to death with a stick over 2 seasons, people aren't going to like that, babe. Do you know what I mean? So I mean, it went, it got pretty dark to like rape threats and people lifting pictures of my family off things, and they go onto different websites. And so, my niece and nephew were quite young at the time. Facebook was kind of a dark place, so completely not on that anymore.
I love this line so much. And for me, I feel like it is the most powerful line in the whole show, where you say, the perpetrator always gets the front line. We follow Jamie's brain around this case. Katie isn't important. Jamie is. Everyone will remember Jamie. No one will remember her. And that's what gets me. Mm-hmm. Because your character is really the only one who kind of does say, front-footed, what about the women in this situation?
Yeah.
How powerful was it for you to say that line, and how meaningful was that as well?
I felt very nervous that I wasn't going to get it right, because, like you said, I'm the only character. My character is the only one that acknowledges this, and I felt like I remember the line actually was Andrew Tate stuff. That Andrew Tate stuff, and in rehearsal we did like a read through, and it just came out my mouth. I just went, and that Andrew Tate shite. And I remember Phil laughing and looking at me and being like, keep that in, because I feel very passionate about obviously as a woman how we are treating women and how we're teaching young men a version of masculinity that is completely disgusting and damaging to not only them, but to the women as well that they're growing up with. So I felt, but the way she delivers it, it's quite low key. That whole episode, that character is she doesn't really want to be there. And I think for me, and this is how I perceived it, is that women are so used to those stories. Women are so used to when they've been offended or they've been attacked or they are the victim, that actually the emphasis goes on who did it and why they did it. And generally speaking, it is a male perpetrator. Mm-hmm. Generally speaking, of course, that's not, statistically, that's what we're looking at. And so it was important for me for that character to kind of show that there's a tiredness around that, there's it's not apathy, but there's I don't know what the word would be. There's a feeling of
almost exasperated by
yeah,
it.
that's the word. Yeah, because a lot of women do feel that way. So I'm so glad, that I got to say that.
And we are going to have to talk about the interrogation interview scene, because that is, you are so incredible in that scene, and the anxiety just builds and builds and builds and builds until that moment where you show the CCTV clip.
Oh, grim. Yeah.
What was that like? To shoot that scene?
That scene happened. So that scene is about 10 minutes long, I think. 10, maybe a bit longer. And we've already shot for 50 minutes at this point. So everyone is very nervous, but this is like, this is where we know the audience, it's not a whodunit, it's a why did he do it, right? Yeah. So we know that the audience is going to find out now. That scene is so intense because that room is it's really small. I can't really compare it in here, but it's tiny. And you've got the camera going round like this, and you've got sound boom operators going round with them, 2 of them, right? You've got really sort of stuck in next to Ashley, and then them 2, and then Mark's over there. And we're so close. And at this point, so much has gone on for Stephen and Owen's characters that they're all fired up. And our characters know he's done it, right? So the whole thing is about just trying to get him to admit that he's done it. And he's very adamant that he hasn't. I think my character feels the most sorry for Stephen's character, the father, because she knows that this man's life is never going to be the same again. And let's remember that it's the person who did it, obviously their life changes forever, but the family around it. And that's what we see in episode 4 in that beautiful, heartbreaking I know what happens, and I had to lock myself in my bathroom and cry for like half an hour. I'm not even joking. I cried like a 6-year-old. Seeing Stephen Graham's character put that teddy bear to bed,
babe.
I can't.
Emotionally scarred for life after
darling,
that.
Yeah. And Christy, anyway, we'll get to that. But yes, the interview scene. So it was very intense. It was very warm in that room as well.
You're like, have I got a sweaty upper lip situation going on?
Honestly. But for me, we'd watched a lot of 24 Hours in Police Custody, so I knew what I wanted to do, which was basically nothing. I didn't want to stand out at all. I wanted to be a piece of thread in the fabric of this amazing thing that we were in. And that's the beauty of every actor there is not trying to pull focus or anything. They're just trying to sit in the actual fabric of it. So I remember showing, that we always worried that like the footage wouldn't work, because once you've done 55 minutes and then that doesn't work,
you're like, okay, back to square one.
Fucking hell.
We're going to knock that door down again. Here we go.
Knock the door down. Owen's going to have to cry for an hour again. Stephen's, all these elements, the driving from the house to that was on a live road.
Which
and we
is
had these
crazy.
traffic lights, and we were meant to have a traffic light cut off or something. I don't know what you'd call it. But then the council wouldn't grant it us. So we would have to try and time it to get through a green light. If we didn't, I was in a van behind the action van, and we were all very quiet in that van. We had Stephen in that van. We had Christine. We had Amelie, me, Amelie's chaperone. I think that was it. But we were all sort of traumatised by that first scene. And then
what are you talking about?
So after we've done the first scene, right?
Yeah.
I run into a van while Owen is doing his scene with Ashley in the moving van. We're all in vans behind it because we need to get to the police station as well, right?
Oh, no, I mean, what were you talking about in the car?
Oh, sorry. Nothing.
What are you talking about?
I was like, what, have you not watched it? I thought you'd watched it.
No, what were you talking about in the van?
Okay, here's the thing. It went eerily silent. And the only thing we did, Amelie's crying there with tissues. Christine sat next to me. I have to change her microphone, but nobody speaks.
Wow.
For 15, no, that's like 10 minutes, I think, or maybe a bit less. It felt a lot longer. We're all dripping with sweat because it was very hot when we were filming this. Christine's mic is like sliding off. so I'm having to adjust that, but nobody spoke.
Wow.
Stephen in the front, us in the back, and we all, once I'd done Christine's microphone, she would whisper, thank you, and I'd whisper, it's okay, babe. And we'd all do like, hold each other's knees, and then as we got to the police station, as we pulled up to the studio, you'd just hear a come on, and we'd get out the car and we'd boom straight into the next section.
Wow.
And that's the level of presence that everybody had. If you just started talking about like, oh, that went all right, didn't it? I mean, it would just pull everybody out.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
can you imagine?
What have
you ordered from catering? Like, yeah, the interrogation scene was pretty intense. And then when you leave the room and you know what's coming next, me and Ashley would leave the room, and we could either go and sit on the side and just let it kind of relax ourselves, or we could go to the monitor and watch. And I remember the second time we did it, which I think was the tape we used, I went to the monitor and watched, and I was just the tears, but everybody was crying.
What's been a really good turning point with you really showing up as yourself?
Okay. I think in the last 5 months, I've really started to try and look after myself, to stop drinking alcohol. Therapy has helped. And I think that I was in a place where I just felt, that I didn't like myself very much. But I think we all go through that. And I needing to understand why I'm doing things and why the choices I was making were not helpful for me. So, yeah, and just trying to embrace more of kind of who I am, which has been difficult. I've said this, I'm quite shy, and people laugh at this and think it's hilarious, but it's true. I am shy, and I am someone that I think I've shrunk myself at times when I shouldn't have done. I think there's like a version of me at home that's quite confident and like anybody, and a version of me kind of as the actress and doing interviews, and this is lovely because this is really relaxed, but certainly, red carpets and things like that, I still don't really know like where to place myself or what to do. And so the work is the most important thing. And, dealing with sexuality and being like all of that stuff has been quite, trying to get comfortable with that stuff as well has been over the last 5 months. But I feel good. I don't think I would have dealt with the kind of attention of adolescence as well if I was not looking after myself. And I also feel like I'm capable of doing a lot more. And I'm, completely in love with the art of acting, kind of times 10 now, because my head's a bit clearer. So, yeah.
And you know who you are a bit more.
Yeah, I think so. But also not being able to hide behind anything, having to sit with uncomfortable feelings and like really like listen when it's excruciating, when you're, dealing with things that you've just ignored for years. That's kind of where I am at the moment. It's kind of a transition period, which is interesting, but worth it.
It's so worth going on that journey.
Yeah.
Because on the other side is so much comfort in yourself, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Especially if you are struggling, like you were saying about sexuality, like everyone goes on a different journey with themselves, no matter how you identify.
Yeah.
And that can take different turns at different times in life.
For sure,
and sometimes you just got to stay present in those moments and go through those uncomfortable feelings to get to the other side and find that comfortability within yourself.
Exactly, yeah.
And it comes when it's meant to.
Yeah. It's odd that, I've got to 38 and I'm sort of now addressing those things, but it's it's a transition period for me right now, which is great. Like I'm up for it, but it's it's not easy. Nothing kind of worth it, that quote, nothing worth it is easy, right? Like that's kind of where I'm at, and it's very exposing, and but you kind of have to rip it up a bit to see what's going on, instead of running away, which I'm good at running away.
We're going to have to quickly talk about Star Wars Andor, because that is coming to our screens very shortly. And what is so incredible about your character in this, I couldn't believe this when I found this out. So Star Wars has been going for almost 50 years, and you are one of the very first openly queer written characters.
Yep.
How incredible is it to be part of that representation in such a huge franchise like that? Yeah,
I mean, it sounds like it would be a massive responsibility, but the fans of Star Wars have been nothing but gorgeous about it. I said this when the first season came out, like I've not had one comment of somebody being nasty about it. We are, myself and Varida are the first, in the live action, the first ever queer characters in the live action films and TV series. And I think it's important. And I think, what they did so well in season 1 is they treated it just like any other relationship, which of course it is. You and I know that. But the writing wasn't, some big, here are the gay characters in Star Wars. It was, here's another relationship that happens to be two women. It's been going on since the beginning of time, and it will go on till the end of time. And I think what's really important is we start seeing it as that, and it not be some sort of like, oh wow, we've put this in. I think Tony wanted it just to be like any other relationship. However, the significance of it is not lost on me, and people have fought all these years for these rights that we have, and so we need to celebrate that, and we need to celebrate that Disney and this company and this franchise and Lucasfilm have included normalizing the normal, if you like. They've normalized the normal, and I think that is extremely important. And Varida and myself were like scared at first. We were like, oh, people are gonna really go for us here. Not that we should have been, but they didn't. And Star Wars fans are the loyalest people on earth, and it's all about good over evil. And for me, making sure that everyone's represented, no matter who you happen to fall in love with, is kind of the point of these shows. Normalizing the normal, and anyone who has anything to say about it negatively, it says way more about them. Like, why do you care who? Number one, I always think about this, like, why do you care who anyone is having sex with?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand why that is so offensive. When your gripe is with love, that's bizarre to me.
Do you think actually playing a character like her, who is authentic herself, has helped you come like more okay with yourself in a way?
Possibly, yeah. I just think it's time I stopped being so nasty to myself. And I think it's time, as women, there's a feeling of needing to shrink and be quiet and fit in. And I'm generally quite happy. It's not that there was some big thing, but I think I just need to get rid of or learn to kind of accept the sort of annoying, nasty voice and crack on with just getting on with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think Vel's an interesting one because even though she's sort of an assassin, if you like, there's an assassin vibe. She's part of a revolution and a rebellion. There's also loads of vulnerability, and you see her panic, and you see her heartbreak, and you see all of that, and that's quite interesting for a Star Wars character who's, you know, quirky badass with a blaster and, you know, bossing everybody about. There's like humanity there, and I think that's what Tony writes so well.
Yeah.
Tony Gilroy, who show runs Andor, he writes human beings pretty well that happen to be in a galaxy far, far away, you know. And that's the point of Star Wars. It's removed, but it comments on everything that we're all sort of feeling. So yeah, Vel was she was sort of the beginning. We shot season 1 in, I think it was 2021. So it's been a couple of years of dancing around that, yeah.
And I mean, playing a rebel leader is always going to be helpful with trying to find your voice, babe, isn't it?
Absolutely,
and
darling.
quieting that negative voice
My
inside.
love. I mean, and you know, with that blaster and that
good for the
cosy,
soul,
I'm
babe.
good. In the hills in Scotland,
Yeah.
I'm fine.
All you just needed was a good costume
I know.
and a blaster.
A blaster and a bit of fresh air.
Yeah, a bit of fresh air.
Just a bit of fresh air.